rattle the handle a bit, then push on the door with all your weight. It does not budge. Not only is it locked, it's also jammed shut. You can't. This door cannot be opened. Ever. At least you can think about opening it, about doors in general. They are, after all, fundamental to your life. Perhaps something useful would come from this. The concrete structure looks military in origin, over half a century old at least, but sturdily built.
The sea's gonna calm down soon, I can feel it. You're back? Good. What can I help you with?
On the table, you see a bowl of water, a rough soap, and next to it, a small hand mirror. The water reflects back a vague image of your clean-shaven face. Despite the bulbous nose, unkempt hair, and persistent swelling, you look a little younger, maybe. You almost look like a professional. Your face, such as it is, a regular human face, sans expression. An old mirror hangs on the wall. You see the reflection of your face in it, such as it is, a regular, clean-shaven police officer. It's just a racist mug. What's there to read here? No, but it will not happen. The mug talk is exhausted. It is time to return to work. The face of King Fleecell smiles at you. For some reason, the smile now strikes you as more forced than it did before. It takes a moment, but gradually it dawns on you that Kunst und Kultur must mean arts and culture. Why they decided to title this one section in Valda is beyond you. It evokes a sense of recognition and fellowship among those privileged enough to understand. As you leaf through this section, you come across several reviews of recent radio plays, as well as a brief artist spotlight featuring a local artist identified only as CS. The main feature, though, is a long essay titled Tip Top Tournée, a critical Mazovian perspective. This so-called artist spotlight is really just a brief Q&A, made all the briefer by the subject's evident hostility to her interviewer. The actual article is surprisingly light on details, but after skimming a page or two, you gather that it has something to do with motor carriage racing. If you don't follow it, you only ever hear about the ludicrous sponsorships and obscene death toll. You think you're settling in for a relaxing recap of the most recent season, maybe sprinkled with some nice anecdotes about a few of the more colorful drivers. Instead, you find yourself skimming a 10,000-word feature about all the politically problematic aspects of Tip Top Tournée. Where to even start? For one, there's the crass commercialism of its sponsorships, and then there's the practically criminal emphasis on deadly motor crashes. So, all of it, basically. Oddly enough, this article has 2 bylines: Nasteb Encolada Bernal and Exilus Buka. There's no way those are real names. Have you ever met anyone named Exilus? Come on, they're plainly pseudonyms. More than that, they're likely anagrams. Under capitalism, the article says, every pursuit has its price. Every pleasure, even one as elemental as the joy of racing others around a track, is reduced to an advertising opportunity. Thus, the so-called tournée becomes a competition between increasingly meaningless brand signifiers. Your discount laundry detergent racing against a pack of Astra cigarettes, or even a frita. And that precisely is what's problematic about it. Were it not for the promise of random, spectacular violence, audiences would quickly lose interest. At the end of the day, it's the destruction of these 750,000 real races that you're really watching for. Sure, you think that, but subconsciously, it's the visions of brand names being engulfed in flames that you crave. It's the stilted language and overconfident tone that's the real giveaway here. You're almost certainly reading a recycled university essay, one that could probably use some edits. Armed with Lena's friendly green ape pen, you spend entirely too much time writing constructive feedback in the margins of the page. By the time you're finished, the original article is nearly illegible. You flip back to the front of the magazine. The table of contents unfolds before you. Unsurprisingly, much of this section is taken up with articles declaring unqualified support for the dock workers' strike. You skim the headlines. Paint the harbor red and white. Martinez tames the wild pines. A city in revolt. First we take Martinez, then we take La Delta. Finally, there's a brief article by the writer G. Martin accusing the owner of the Capeside apartments of illegally attempting to evict certain communist tenants simply for not having paid their rent. The eternal problem, according to G. Martin, is that under capitalism, the worker is rendered incapable of perceiving their own agency or lack thereof. Thus, they tend to experience their own oppression as though it were happening to somebody else. Is that true? Have you felt estranged from your own self recently? You flip back to the front of the magazine. The table of contents unfolds before you. One more door. There is no way to open the supply depot door. Accept it. You cannot open all the doors. You have to integrate this into your character. Some doors will forever remain closed, even if every single other door will open at one time or another. Maybe to a key, or maybe to some sort of tool meant for opening doors. But this one will never accede to such commands. A realization crucial to personal growth. Crucial. The bullet is still safely sealed away in a... There it is again, the scent of apricots. 6 crumbling petals. Somewhere in central Jamrock, Lieutenant Kitsuragi steps into the public library. Rows of shelves pass on either side. You feel he should be here for this, for in-depth flower analysis. Police badge on which you see the photo. In your hands, you hold 16 Days of Coldest April by Yekatina Dahl. The cover image shows a row of concrete apartments above which span a black and white rainbow. Indeed, the book is unusually heavy in your hands, as though the cover were lined with lead. It would do that in Grad. You flip through the book. The pages are thinner than you realized, and the type quite small and tightly set. It's nearly 600 pages long. Real art is dense and difficult. If it didn't feel like you had to wrestle a suicidal bear to get through it, you weren't really reading. The back cover is dominated by a black and white photograph of the author. She can't be much older than her mid-30s in this photograph, and yet, from this cover, the eyes of a sad old woman stare back at you. In cold, detached prose, the author describes a scene from one of the Yugograd riots in the 20s. Youths overturned motor carriages and set trash cans ablaze, while heavily armored guardsmen dash in and disperse them in a flurry of baton blows. As ethnic tensions run wild, a pair of young lovers meet each other on the street. Somehow, in the middle of all the chaos, they manage to lock arms and look into each other's eyes. It would physically hurt you to keep reading. Are you sure? You've made the right life choices today, sir. In cold, as it would physically hurt you they go through a brief and somewhat awkward love affair. And in the end, they betray each other and succumb to the absurdity of Gradian life. The man becomes a lens grinder, completely abandoning his former existence. He toils through the daily drudgery at the Lenka polyfabricate. Happiness and fulfillment have eluded him his whole life. And in the end, he has nothing to do but dedicate himself to the craft. She spends the next several decades standing at a conveyor in a Sosnovo fish processing plant. The smell of fish guts slowly seeps into her hair and skin as every single one of her dreams dies, one by one. The memory of their short time spent together tortures the former lovers ceaselessly until the end of their days. Years pass in solitude, their bodies growing ever more decrepit. As life leaves their remains between the soil sheets, their final thoughts are filled with regret. Medicinal purposes of the pearl. The cover of this heavy tome features a number of esoteric symbols. Flipping through the book, you find a number of sections on the general benefits of the pearl. A large pharmacopoeia makes up nearly half of the book. You come across the following explanation. While modern pharmacopoeia are continually updated by so-called experts based on the results of clinical trials, readers will find assembled here the timeless wisdom relied upon by generations of traditional Seolite medicine practitioners, Mesk mystics, and Ilmaran folk doctors. Finally, something to calm the angry spirits that have been plaguing you. It seems to contain descriptions of the medicinal properties of various ingredients that may be gathered from the pearl, as well as instructions for producing a variety of herbal remedies. There are a number of Seolite tonics that promise to improve your short-term memory, but nothing that speaks to your condition. What you're describing is booze. You don't need any herbs for that. There's nothing in here that speaks to hangovers directly. However, while browsing through the various descriptions, you become convinced that you could assemble something from the ingredients listed here. Want to give it a shot? First, you need to choose a base ingredient. Next, you'll need to combine the base ingredient with an appropriate vehicle. Lastly, is there anything else you'd like to add? The mint and aloe vera make this poultice ideal for soothing inflammation and minor burns. It won't do anything for your hangover though. Would you like to try again? Very well. First, choose a base ingredient. Next, you'll need to combine the base ingredient with an appropriate vehicle. Lastly, is there anything else you'd like to add? The ginger root will help with the nausea, and the birch bark tea will help you flush out the toxins. The ginseng should give you more energy as a nice bonus. The very thought of this tea causes your muscles to relax and your mind to clear. You're more present and in control than you were a moment ago. A tingle rushes down your spine, and you feel your toes uncurl. If only it could always be like this. Very well. First, choose a base ingredient. Next, you'll need to combine the base ingredient with, lastly, is there anything else you'd like to add? You've created a delicious tincture of whiskey and ginger. According to the pharmacopoeia, it should increase your energy and focus, though, in your experience, it's only done the opposite. Would you like to try again? Very well. First, choose a base ingredient. Next, you'll need to combine the base ingredient with an appropriate vehicle. Lastly, is there anything else you'd like to add? You've created a delicious tincture of whiskey and ginger. According to the pharmacopoeia, would you like to try again? You close the book and find yourself staring at the familiar cover once more. The Greatest Innocence by João Paulo Salomão Lopes de Fuego. The book is large and heavy. Browsing through the various chapters, you try your best to understand the ceaseless overflow, the sprawl of names, dates, places, events historical. Most of it ends up as a twisted mass of facts inside your brain. Your educational survey is done. Did you catch any of that? No. Oh well, it's pop quiz time. Let's see what you've learned. This might take a few minutes. You ready? That's the spirit. Here we go. Question 1. Who was the first innocence? Dolores Day. Incorrect. Dolores Day was the innocence of humanism, internationalism, and the welfare state. She codified parliamentary democracy and created modern institutions. Among these, the moral intern, she was powerful and beautiful on all her icons. Her colors are silver, white, and apricot. And when you think her name, Dolores, stomach acid rises to the back of your throat, and it hurts. You see a flash silver, a wreath, an airport bag, and blonde hair. You don't know why. Another choice, perhaps? Steer clear of this one. There's something terrible about this one. A strange sensation of loss. When she left the earth, the dust, and the ice, and the humans. That is unimportant to the quiz. Stop thinking about this. Yes, the quiz is impersonal. No need to rouse sensations in yourself at the mention of Dolores Day. Who was the first innocence? It wasn't Dolores Day. Incorrect. Sola was anointed during the previous century and even lived to see the current one. She was an urban planner who spoke her mind and largely left history to its own devices, encouraging people to excel on their own rather than prescribing to a deified model of history. She is often called an anti-innocence. Sola resigned after an assassination attempt by a Yugo nationalist who blamed her for not taking the side of the left during the turn-of-the-century revolutions. Innocences don't usually resign. Care to try again? Correct. Nothing much is known about him. It's not even clear that he was a he, but Franco Negro presumed as such and called him Pius. He's depicted as a young man with molten gold pouring out of his mouth. All he spoke was gold. It's said he invented God and equality of men before God. He also introduced the gold standard as a way for measuring people's love for Aurum. As the first innocence, he declared that there should be more of those like him. It is presumed his disciples were the beginning of the Holy Party, the founding party. Question 2. Who was the strongest innocence? Easy. Everybody knows the answer to this. You, me, anybody. An innocence is the highest category of historical personage in the world, a literal personification of history. Traditionally, an innocence, when anointed, assume supreme rule over the Occident or the known world in general. At least the parts that matter. I can do better. Okay, so commonly an innocence does not enforce his or her power through military power. This is seen as unnecessary. The innocence wins because an innocence can't help but win, for their deeds are inevitabilities. Did this help? Damn. Good Dolores. Incorrect again. While she originated many modern institutions, launched several successful expeditions, and was even critical of the innocentic system itself, and somehow keeps popping up in your mind, she is not often considered the strongest. Even though the words most associated with her rule are l'amour, la compassion, la autodiscipline, love, compassion, self-control, which could be seen as facets of strength. Would you like to try again? Please, relax. Incorrect. Vespa Messina is not a person, but a defunct state on the southeastern coast of the Occident. It used to take up most of the peninsula before separating into the republics of Vespa and Messina. Care to try again? Correct. Named the innocence of militarism, he codified hereditary rule, but at the same time ended serfdom and established the Inter-Isolari Real as the global reserve currency. He also established the concept of the nation. Franco Negro attempted to solve the rising tensions between the aristocracy and bourgeoisie by building a unified society in which every man has a place and a mission, but at the same time may rise to nobility provided on the strength of his virtue. Question 3. Who was the false innocence? Yes, there exists a group called the Founding Party, known as the Holy Party, during the time of the Pericarnacian. This, the world's oldest international organization, spends its time in search of either the re-emergence of the innocents or new members. There seems to be a mix-up with the sources. It's not my fault. At least it clearly wasn't Dolores Day. She wouldn't be false. She's beautiful. Correct. There have been a number of counter or false innocences, some assumed to have innocentic qualities, some who just thought so themselves. Occasionally, they have the support of a faction inside the ecclesiastic organization, and accusations of foul play have arisen. The most famous and important of these was Ernest Pasternak. He was into torture, despotism, hymns, cannons, and world conquest, but got defeated and humiliated by Stepan the Despicable of Kedra. Final stretch. You've come so far and learned so much. This is the most important one. Question 4. Who was the greatest innocence? The most important of them all. The most precious to humankind. Correct. The Mesk might see Franco Negro as the father of nations, but as of this century, there's been a great shift in attitude. Dolores Day has become widely regarded as the greatest innocence, a most radical change to the whole fabric of the world. Everything from inter-isolary travel to the connected world to 3 consecutive scientific revolutions can be traced back to her. Every decade that passes, she seems less human somehow and more beautiful. Congratulations on finishing the test. The results and your subsequent grade have been calculated. You get a D, not particularly remarkable, but technically a passing grade. Not that anyone really expected better. You would have done better if you just left Dolores Day for the end. Dial the Dolores Day down a bit. You are shouting at an inanimate object, like a real weirdo. No wonder you seem to have trouble with the right answers.
Man, something's weird about this book. You should do something fun instead. Rock out. Forget about it.
In your hand, you hold Dick Mullen and the mistaken identity. The brittle paperback feels fragile to the touch. The cover features a pastiche of different scenes. In the foreground, a man in a dark overcoat clutches a pistol to his chest. Rising up behind him are two silhouettes wrapped in a passionate embrace. The tagline reads, "Detective Dick Mullen must prove his innocence after an old friend is murdered by someone who looks just like Dick Mullen." That seems to sum up the premise nicely. Needless to say, it violates nearly every RCM regulation for a detective to investigate a murder in which he is a suspect. The story opens with a knock at the door. Detective Dick Mullen is greeted by an old friend, Charlie Spillane, who's come to Mullen to ask a favor on this dark and cold night. Spillane needs Mullen to drive him in from Vespa to a small town along the Insulindian coast. Despite his friend's apparent agitation, Mullen does as he's asked, then returns home where he passes out drunk, as he does most nights. An extremely unprofessional and hurtful stereotype that's offensive to all upstanding officers of the law. Two days later, Mullen is arrested by the Vespa police and charged with the murder of Charlie Spillane. At his interrogation, Mullen learns that Charlie Spillane was shot in a bar in the very town Mullen dropped him off in by a man matching Mullen's description. Desperate to clear his name, Mullen manages to convince the Vespa police to release him for 3 days so that Mullen may solve his friend's murder and prove his innocence. Of course, Mullen didn't do it. That's the whole premise of the book. Anyway, Mullen returns to the seaside bar where Spillane was murdered and meets a beautiful, mysterious woman named Diana Deneva. And not just any dame. She's truly one in a million, a knockout whose mind is as dangerous as her curves. But she's got a secret. Secrets are the currency of human relations. Your secrets are unknown even unto you. So does that make you a rich man or a beggar? Deneuve reveals that she was Spillane's lover and that he was mixed up with a local amphetamine smuggling operation. As soon as Mullen begins pulling at strings, the whole conspiracy begins to unravel. Not only is the local police captain in on the amphetamine ring, so is the son of a powerful politician and a strung-out art collector named Torvald, each of whom has his own reasons for wanting Spillane dead. Outwardly, the old police captain is a real law and order crypto-fascist, a barrel-chested man who's beaten his share of suspects to pulp. But he's also dirty and increasingly paranoid that someone's going to expose his role in the drug ring. He would certainly have the motive and the means, but the captain walks with a noticeable limp from an old war injury. Is it possible that he was able to conceal it long enough to commit the murder? A typical privileged twat. In all likelihood, he's just in over his head. He does bear a personal grudge against Spillane, though, a former prosecutor who nearly brought down his father's administration. The kid doesn't exactly have Dick Mullen's manly build, but he is the correct height, and while interrogating him at his home, Mullen did notice a certain overcoat that looks suspiciously like his own. Torvald, the art collector, is a strung-out mess. Frankly, it's hard to imagine him holding a pistol steady enough to actually hit someone, let alone plug them 3 times in the chest the way Spillane got did. That said, Torvald and Spillane have a long history, and while interrogating him, Mullen discovers that Torvald was once involved with Deanna Deneuve. Could it be that this is all over a sordid love triangle? One evening, Deanna Deneuve comes to Mullen's hostel room in tears. The two of them drink half a bottle of vodka, and soon they're seeking comfort in each other's arms. Well, that testimony won't be admissible any longer. The man's a prosecutor's nightmare. Solving a murder counts for nothing if all the evidence gets thrown out in court over police misconduct. As the two lovers share a post-coital cigarette, Deanna Deneuve turns to Mullen and says, "By the way, Dick, there was something else I meant to tell you. I love you." Whatever it is, Mullen never hears the words. A blow to the base of his skull knocks him out cold instantly. When Mullen comes to, Deneuve is dead on the hostel bed next to him. To make matters worse, his clothes are covered with her blood. Mullen trashes his blood-stained clothes and flees the hostel, knowing it's only a matter of hours before the cops discover Deneuve's body, if they haven't been tipped off already. Fleeing a crime scene, destroying evidence. Even if Detective Mullen didn't commit the murder, he should be facing years behind bars. The heat is on. If Dick Mullen can't solve both murders before the cops catch up to him, he's going away for life. Can you solve the case before the cops close in? What is it, Detective? It's a dangerous line of work, but somebody has to do it. That's why Dick Mullen never lets anyone get too close. There was never a time when he wasn't a detective. He was born a detective. Dick Mullen was made to crack skulls and solve cases. It's who he is. He could no more stop being a detective than a tiger could cease to be a predator in the night. You're no tiger though, Harry. You're a man. It's your curse to have to choose. For a moment, you cease to read the story on the page and see the book for what it is. A collection of brittle, cheaply printed pages held together by glue made from the hooves of horses. From nowhere, you hear the screech of sneakers on a waxed floor, and you feel the burn of rope against your hands. Are these figments of some other life? You won't find the answers you're looking for here, in other words. Is it really so evil, Detective? Like what? You don't know how you know, but you can feel this book laughing at you. You think contemplating art is going to save you? Whatever you say, art cop. The book has stopped laughing, but you can feel it grinning smugly at you. You know you look like a madman, right? Giving an inanimate object the finger like that. So, who did it, Detective? Who killed Charlie Spillane and Deanna Deneuve? Have you been paying attention at all? It wasn't Mullen. It was an imposter. Now go on. Find out who really did it. You begin furiously flipping through pages. Even as you know these books follow a series of well-worn tropes, you find yourself completely engrossed. You're turning pages so fast, you don't even notice the ancient spine coming unglued. You try to grab the pages as they come loose, but your fingers aren't quick enough. They're gone. Dozens of pages scatter across the floor. The last fifth or so of the book seems to have been lost. It's possible that you could gather and reassemble the pages, but it would take way too long. That's right. You never will. But then, isn't that how it is in real life, Detective? In your hand, you hold 4/5 of Dick Mullen and the mistaken identity. The edges of the pages are worn and smudged. A lot of people have read about the Devil Woman's altercations with the Heimdall Man. The jacket copy proclaims, "Man from Heimdall returns in his most exciting adventure yet. After crashing into a strange jungle, cannibalistic natives abduct his only surviving comrade, Noble Tyribald. Before Man from Heimdall can mount a rescue, he is ambushed by a tribe of female warriors and taken to the ancient citadel of Cloud City, where a mysterious and wicked queen rules supreme. Will Man from Heimdall be able to escape his dire situation and find his missing friend?" You open the book to a random page. Man from Heimdall, wielding his 2 Zweihanders, is carving through a sea of savages, his visage fixed in grim determination. His arms, whirling like windmills, are soaked with the blood of his enemies. Mangled corpses litter the battlefield. Good God, this is some retrograde stuff. When was this shit written? You flip to the copyright page. This book was written in 38. Berserker rage burns in his azure-hued eyes as he brings glory and honor to his long-lost Heimdalla tribe. From the village of Heimdall, the ivory giant roars like an ice bear, and the winds of Gatla howl out his name. Man from Heimdall rides on a gilded griffin, his golden mane billowing in the breeze. Both Zweihanders sheathed on his back. He is off to war. Will he conquer his enemies? Will he conquer himself? The steel muscles of Man from Heimdall gleam in the humid jungle air. Yet the man does not sweat. In meditation, his soul drifts in the frigid northlands he calls home. A passage reads, "The man from Heimdall looks up, his eyes blue as the mountain lakes of his homeland. He rarely speaks, but now his voice booms in the darkened throne room. Do not try to sap my masculine essence, wicked temptress. Son of Heimdall will never succumb to your seductive wiles. Thine spells are no match for purity and strength of will. Brothers of Heimdall, stand above the vices of flesh, for it is weak and corruptible, yet mine is forged in gore and strife." Queen Lydiana just laughs, a sultry and salacious sound. "Then I have grand plans for you, Man from Heimdall." She gestures her diabolical hand toward an array of potions and unguents. "First, you shall please me. Then lead my armies against the vicious cannibals. Not a muscle moves in the face of the Man from Heimdall. Yet inside, there is turmoil. This goes against all he holds sacrosanct." What do you even know about literature? Have you ever read a book in your life? Write a thesis. Man from Heimdall is done with you. You open his good God. You flip to the copyright. Berserker rage. Man from Heimdall. The steel muscles. A passage. Thine I have grand plans for you. In the final pages, Man from Heimdall mounts Gallavarin, his mighty griffin, and turns his gaze to the horizon. Queen Lydiana is dead, but an army of cannibals is storming the gates, and still there's no word of trusty Tyribald. To find out what happens next, you'll have to pick up Man from Heimdall and the Three-Eyed Skull, available in fine bookstores everywhere. Spring 39.